Here we are, Ralphie and Potsy.
All Nations
Punting
Hotel.
Melbourne style, All Nations.
Let's do it.
We should always remember to wrap the people with All Nations. Gary, Bobby and the team, Darce, they look after us extremely well every time.
Iconic Richmond pub.
Yes.
It's fantastic. So if you're in the area, it's limited seating on Mondays for us. Come say hello. So how's your week?
I had
Did you avoid Kilmore?
Kilmore. I did the form for Kilmore, and fortunately for me, my punters, we backed the first winner, which was good. But the rest, unfortunately, Kilmore just doesn't cope with the weather.
No.
They've been a bit unlucky there. I mean, not like you didn't have to be far either side of Kilmore, and there would have been no rain. There was just a band of storms that just kept bullseyeing Kilmore, much the same as it did the day before at Ballarat. So,
well, Potts, I've heard what you said last week, and isn't it a case of the harder you work, the luckier you get, or the worse your setup, the more vulnerable you are to luck?
yeah.
So if Kilmore sounds like it hasn't had a decent set of drainage since Moses was fullback for Jerusalem,
Yeah.
They're just vulnerable, and it's their fault, is it? Or the industry's fault?
Yeah, I wouldn't know enough about it. I think there's a lot of pressure on these clubs, and they probably do it tough, and yeah, like.
So
the problem is they're regularly compared to the city tracks that have got huge budgets, and I just think it's so. I'm always very reluctant to criticise any of the country track managers because they're hard-working people.
At least
that really do their best.
But at least you walked Ballarat.
Yeah.
So what can you tell us who aren't your subscribers? You do send it to your subscribers. So those who aren't, what did you know beforehand that had you guard up or had you ready for certain things that happened?
First thing I want to say is the track manager down there, Dylan, is a terrific guy.
Yep. How long has he been there, do you know?
He's only been there the last 3 years or so, right?
So I reckon 5 years ago that changed, didn't it?
Yeah, so all the changes that he's doing his best to manage happened before he ever set foot on the place. Okay, so the three aspects of that is that there's the original track.
Yep.
Then 10 years ago they built the inside track, which, you know, is inside the outer track and shares the home straight, and the chute. But then subsequent to that, I think probably 5 years ago or thereabouts, they dug up the home straight and the chute and redid it. So you've got three different kinds of profiles.
And apparently it was great they took the dip out. That's what they said at the time.
Yeah, it was all about taking the dip out. And
does that help?
No, they've ended up with a surface that has trouble absorbing moisture. So that's the chute and the home straight. It's very, because they ground the dirt up and put it back in, it's very dense, and it just doesn't. When they irrigate it, the water sits there for a while before it can soak in. So obviously, when it rained there on Saturday, that's what would have been happening.
Right.
In that home straight, it would have been sitting on the surface. So, you know, like, I think the whole situation there is way too complex, and it is with most tracks. I want to say with most tracks, it's far too complex to ask short questions like, was the track overwatered, and give a black and white answer to that.
Right.
Okay? It's too complex for that. There's no yes or no answer to that question.
Let me ask you the question this way then. This is a fair way, I think. Do you think there was paranoia from the club, which might mean also direction towards the curators, so it's not the curator's fault if he's following orders? Do you think there was a paranoia because last year the card was on pace assisted, and I'll get to actually the clarity of that in a second. But
so first of all, I want to say that last year the criticism of the track and the track staff was completely over the top,
correct,
completely unfair,
correct,
and it really stung Dylan. And it was just. I mean, I review every Victorian meeting, and I make notes on the advantages. Now, whether it was fair, there was an advantage to be off the rail, on the rail, run on, whatever, and there's so many factors that affect that. And I would say a vast majority of the meetings that I review, there is an advantage somewhere.
Yeah.
There's very few. It's a very small percentage. Right is right, track fair. Okay.
Well, it's a living, breathing thing.
It is. And the thing is, the game is so. It's about subtleties. Like, punters want to believe that they can be in some control of it, and it's about obvious things. But the reality is, it's about all the little tiny subtle things, and little things make a difference. So I'll give you an example. On Saturday, there was the storms were vaguely forecast, and there was no wind over 20 kilometres really forecast. And an hour before that meeting, all of a sudden, out of nowhere, the wind blew up to 50 kilometres an hour.
Yes.
And it completely changed races 1 and 2 because it was headwind into that chute.
Yep.
And like, it was unpredictable. It was completely unpredictable, and everyone could get carried away about the surface, about which lanes you're on. I don't think, like, It was just an advantage to be outside horses in those 2 early races because you had cover from the wind.
Okay. Yep.
And you know, but that was, you know, completely out of anyone's control. So to get back to your question, you're asking me. So yes, there was the criticism last year that was completely unfair, and it was largely driven by our mate, the cherry picker Matt Stewart. He was relentless in his criticism. He never stopped, and on Saturday morning when he was previewing this year's meeting, he still kept going on about how the track was biased last year.
Like Greg Miles does this about 3 years in there.
Well, he must be you know, on the break after his last one in the centre meeting. So, you know, yes, I think that did play into it. But
did you look at last year's results recently? Doesn't matter.
Yeah, no, I knew them. Yeah.
But I'll give you an example of the type of hysteria that you're talking about.
Yeah.
Part of the hysteria was it was an unfair leader bias because Galaxy Raider got beaten as favourite by the second favourite. You know the second favourite?
It was dollar for dollar.
Dollar for dollar, who's since won the Eclipse and won at Melbourne Cup Day, both in sensational times. And Galaxy Raider since has won that many.
I remember doing a show with Jake Henson and Matty Taylor.
Yeah.
After that Ballarat meeting, we went through how I did all my ratings and everything. And the ratings out of that meeting held up incredibly well.
100%.
There was a minor on-pace advantage,
yes.
right? And it wasn't like it's just the criticism of him last year was so unfair.
So I'll give another example that we got. Sorry ourselves, but we got praised too strong a word. I don't know, but for our post-race assessment at Caulfield Cup Day, when there was some penny hysteria this year, a month ago or 6 weeks ago, that it was unfair leader biased. So what I did, I sent out I got right into the meeting 5 weeks later with the clarity of what happened, Cox Plate Day, Melbourne Cup Week, the Sandown Cup. That gives you time to say,
yeah,
wasn't that bad? So we said there were subtleties, it was your word, subtleties, degrees, slight advantage to the on-paces, but not overblown. Our Crown Mistress won the first, then won on Melbourne Cup Day. No horse won out of the race. The Pinot won. Apparently that was due to track bias, and then it won the Oaks, and nothing did anything else out of it. Cliff's Edge led all the way, and then ran second in a sensational time in Aloysia. There was probably only one horse in the entire day.
And then ran a very good race in the Wait for Age race.
Correct. There was probably only one horse for the entire day that was affected by the track, that if the track had been playing different, and it's still only maybe, was Shillelagh.
Yeah.
Ran the best last 400 of the day, maybe, but they actually walked in that race. So what I'm saying is, to back up your point about the subtleties, often the hysteria about leader bias, it just happens to be that 3 or 4 or maybe more leaders win, and they're the best horses in the race.
So my opinion was after that Caulfield Cup meeting that there was a very minor disadvantage being in lanes 2 and 3.
Exactly.
Actually being at lanes 4 and 5, where Shillelagh was and where Marmello was, wasn't as big a disadvantage as people wanted to make out. The problem was the horses in lanes 2 and 3 weren't bringing them into the race as they normally would.
So that's race shape.
It's race shape. So, you know, it was, again, any criticism there was completely overblown. Like I said, at the time I thought, you know, there was the length of the turf was a minor issue, but you know what I mean? Like, it's so subtle.
So you would...
in those situations, the point you're making, Ralph, is right. The format of those situations tends to hold up.
Because they're fast. There's an incentive to lead and there's an incentive to drag out talent. So I try not to be personal, but the reality is, too often these things, you were saying about Ballarat, which I didn't hear, but it's driven by people who don't do form properly, who get platforms that they shouldn't have.
Absolutely. There's a lack of substance in what they do. So on that exact subject, let's move on to another subject that's topical. I listened to the radio this morning and I heard Matt Stewart going on about how, in Tom Melbourne's case, is it that he's not genuine, or is it that he's just reached a level that he can't overcome? And I just want to say to Matt, well, there's a few points on this subject I want to make. The first point I would make is that Tom Melbourne has not won a race since they changed his racing pattern.
No.
Okay, so they're asking that horse to do something that's not natural to him, and it just hasn't worked. It's completely backfired. And I would say they're not going to win another race until they go back to the situation of dominating races with that horse and tricking him, making him give control from himself to the jockey.
Yes.
Okay, so that's my view on Tom Melbourne. And I just want to say to Matt you give up yourself for a lack of substance, and whatever. But I do question the people that give you the platform to have these opinions that have an influence. And like in the case of Ballarat last year, where you roundly criticised Dylan and it stung him, that brings into question, that puts an awful lot of pressure on that guy, who's a hard-working guy that doesn't deserve it, that's dealing with a very complex set of circumstances. So my problem with you, Matt, is that you don't seem to care about who you take out along the way. If you've had a bad day on the punt or whatever, you're just a bit annoyed about something, or you're running an agenda for certain trainers. Okay, now in this case with Tom Melbourne, Matt, you mustn't watch replays of races, or if you are watching them, you mustn't take any notice, because I can assure you that an extremely high percentage of races I watch, I would say it's very close to 100%, the horse's body language changes as they hit the line, and an unbelievably high percentage of horses know exactly what they're doing. Their ears change, their whole body language changes. A lot of it's in response to the rider, because the rider relaxes as they go across the line, but the horses know exactly where the winning post is. They know what the game's about, and anyone that thinks that the horses, like you could drop Tom Melbourne back in class and ride him that way with cover, and he's likely to still run second. Okay, I don't think he'll win a race until he goes forward. But if you dropped him far enough back in class, he'd win, because the other horses would just disappear out from behind him. Okay, so like if you dropped him back to a 64 and with 55 kilos or something. So it's to say that horses are unaware of where the finish line is, it's an extraordinary position to publicly voice for someone that dresses themselves up as some sort of, that has an impact on other people's employment and the pressure they feel.
I didn't hear anything what he said, obviously. So with Tom Melbourne, the interesting thing is that I did see someone on Twitter put this out, good on him, for getting both sides of the argument that I think he won close to 900,000, is that right, this prep?
Yep.
So he's won a lot, and he's raced incredibly consistently. Where the cause and effect is interesting to me is that, and obviously I'll study Vince Cardi's figures, and you do it your own way, but in the end all we're doing is looking at different measurements, and providing you're looking at measurements, that's your starting point for a credible opinion. If you're not looking at measurements, you've got no credibility. The interesting thing that, as you say, and that's the thing that's stuck in my head always beyond the data, is that I was on him that day at Sandown, and I was on him that day at Flemington, and Jesus, they went quick. Now, the day at Flemington, he sat just off him, but Michelle Payne broke a land speed record on one of Lloyd's, that name escapes me, might have been Foundry. But, so, it's sitting 5 lengths off him, but
Nevis
still, Nevis. So it still would have been leading most races at the speed it was going. When it led and won at Sandown, it was unbelievably fast. Yes, there was a tailwind in the back straight, but it's funny how often the cause and effect sometimes changes people's mindset, and they think, right, we need to ride this horse with cover so you can relax. Well, you still got to play the circumstances on the day. In the Toorak handicap, Bossy went forward, but he went forward too quickly, and I don't necessarily blame him, because he tried something from the outside barrier.
Yeah.
And they had to go fast. But if he...
And my criticism of Bossy would be, he was probably right into instructions.
Yeah.
Was in the Flemington race when he let all our roads lead.
That's it.
He should have gone to the front that day, and if he had got loose of the field,
yes,
he might have tricked Tom Melbourne into winning that race.
And what he definitely would have done, regardless of what the result is, what he definitely would have done, he would have made Shillelagh more tired trying to chase it.
Yeah.
Shillelagh's got a big burst of speed. We mentioned the Caulfield race, best 400 of the day.
Yep.
If she's more tired chasing him, there it is. 14 minute mark, part 2?
Yep, that's part 1.